She hit me with $1 million fine. That's how this nightmare started. Not a mistake, not a typo, a threat that if I didn't obey her, my so-called debt could spiral into 7 figures. And the punchline: a few months later, that same HOA president was standing in front of a judge while I held the court order that kicked her and her entire board out of the very building they thought they ruled. But let me back up, because none of this makes sense unless you hear it from the start. My name's Hank Mercer. My legs don't work, but my brain does. I'm an engineer by trade, a problem solver by nature. My house, the one I live in now, was built by my grandpa long before any HOA ever showed up on the block. For years, it was quiet. I had my projects in the garage, my service dog Daisy at my side, and a ramp I designed myself. Aircraft-grade aluminum non-slip tread motion lights. It was beautiful, safe, everything it needed to be. It was freedom. Then Karen George moved in. Newly elected HOA president. Clipboard in one hand, golf cart in the other, and an ego bigger than the subdivision. The first shot fired came as a white envelope under my windshield. A $500 fine. Violation: unapproved architectural modification. That modification was my wheelchair ramp. I remember staring at her signature on the bottom of the letter, bold and smug, like she just won something. My first instinct wasn't anger, it was disbelief. This was access, basic human access protected by federal law. But she didn't see it that way. To her, I wasn't a neighbor. I was a target. 2 days later, another envelope. This one taped to my front door right above Daisy's nose marks on the glass. Now the problem was my van, my only way to drive. Custom controls, lowered floor side ramp. The HOA rulebook said no commercial vehicles in driveways. She snapped a photo, conveniently cropping out the disabled plates, and fined me another $500. A week in, I was already $1,500 in the hole. The third fine was the kicker. She called my low-voltage security line a permitted inspected alarm wire and unauthorized fence. Another $500. By then, it was obvious. This wasn't about rules. This was about me. I sat on my porch with those letters spread across the table, the sun setting over perfectly trimmed lawns. My chest felt hollow. I'd built my life around solutions. Logic, things that made sense. Now this woman was tearing it apart with a clipboard and a smile. I wanted to scream. I wanted to roll down the street and tell her where she could shove her fines. Instead, I called my grandpa. He listened silent until he said, "Son, give a toddler a hammer and they'll smash everything they see. Don't let her smash you. Be smarter." So I did what engineers do. I documented. Photos, measurements, videos of the van ramp in action. And I watched her. That's when Tom, my neighbor 2 houses down, came into play. Retired air traffic controller. His garage looks like NASA threw up inside it. Antennas, radios, scanners. He knew everything about this street, and he knew Karen's routine. Morning patrol at 8 noon, at one evening at 6, predictable as clockwork. That predictability became my first weapon. I mounted a tiny camera to my wheelchair and waited. Right on time, her golf cart rounded the corner. She parked diagonally across the sidewalk, blocking me in completely. I kept my voice calm while the camera rolled. "Karen, my ramp is legal. My van is legal. My alarm is permitted." Her fake smile evaporated. "The rules apply to everyone. You are not special." I pointed at the public sidewalk she was blocking. "Right now, you're denying me access." She folded her arms and snapped, "I'm conducting HOA business. I'll park here as long as I want. Not until you pay and tear that ramp down." She thought she was cornering me. In reality, she just handed me video evidence of an ADA violation, complete with her smug face filling the frame. For a moment, I felt victorious, but that feeling didn't last. A week later, at 2 a.m, my entire property exploded in light and sirens. Not by accident. Someone had cut my alarm wire. The police arrived, Officer Ruiz making his notes, while Tom's drone buzzed above recording the figure fleeing across a lawn toward Karen's house. That night broke something in me. It wasn't about money anymore. She wanted me gone. She wanted me unsafe in my own home. I sat in the dark, hands shaking over my wheels, Daisy pressed against my knee, and I whispered, "Maybe she's right. Maybe I can't win this." The thought disgusted me. I hated myself for even considering packing up, giving her what she wanted. But then I remembered my ramp, my van, my grandpa's porch. Everything here was earned. And if I gave it up, I'd be proving her point that a man in a chair was easy to break. That was the night I swore I wouldn't break. In the dusty attic among my grandpa's old file boxes, I found the turning point. A lease agreement from 1985. My grandfather had once leased a corner lot to the HOA for $1 a year, their headquarters, and in that lease clauses requiring them to keep the peace and follow all state and federal laws. Karen, with her harassment and ADA violations, had broken the very contract that gave her power. That building was mine, which meant the HOA was my tenant. I laughed loud, raw laughter that scared Daisy into barking. For weeks I'd been playing defense. Now I was the landlord. I hired Mark, a property and ADA lawyer. When I laid everything out on his conference table, the fines, the video, the police report, and that golden lease, he grinned. "This," he said, "is beautiful." We went on the attack. First, a complaint to the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division. Every photo, every video neatly compiled. Then a notice to cure or quit 30 days for the HOA to drop the fines, apologize, and remove Karen, or else they'd be evicted from their beloved headquarters. Predictably, Karen did nothing. 30 days passed in silence. On day 31, Mark filed eviction papers. The hearing date came. Karen marched in with a rookie lawyer glaring daggers at me as if pure rage could rewrite contracts. Her lawyer droned about paint colors and aesthetics. The judge cut him off cold. "We're not talking about paint. We're talking about a lease." When Mark presented the police report, the ADA violations, and the lease clause in black and white, it was over. The judge stamped the writ of possession with a thud that echoed like a gavel in my skull. HOA had 48 hours to vacate. Karen didn't move. Of course she didn't. So the sheriff scheduled enforcement, and by some miracle the timing lined up with the annual HOA Summer Festival, the crown jewel of Karen's empire. Picture this: kids with painted faces, food trucks humming music blasting from the porch of the HOA building. And right at 1 o'clock I rolled down the street with Mark on one side and 2 sheriff's deputies on the other. The music stumbled. Conversations died. Karen froze mid-command, clipboard in hand. When the deputies served the writ and ordered everyone out of the building, her face twisted into something ugly, desperate. She shouted that I was trespassing on HOA property. The deputy, calm as stone, handed her the stamped order. "Ma'am, this property belongs to Mr. Mercer. Vacate immediately." The crowd's silence was crushing. Neighbors who once trembled under her threats watched as she screamed, red-faced, accusing law enforcement of corruption. Kids clutched their parents' hands. Volunteers packed up the bouncy castle. Within 30 minutes, the deputies had cleared the building and handed me the keys. Karen stood on the lawn, pale, shaking, humiliated. That's where the story ends, because that's the moment everything shifted. She wasn't the queen anymore. She was just a neighbor stripped of her crown, exposed in front of everyone she'd ruled through fear. And if there's one lesson I carried out of that war, it's this: when someone abuses power, the surest weapon against them isn't anger, it's proof, patience, and the law.